and welcome to the latest episode of Off the Fence, brought to you in association with BoyleSports, but of course you know that by now. This is our national wrap-up show, and of course looking ahead to air on Saturday as well, so plenty to get into in this show. And dramatic weekend in our sport of horse racing, I think it's fair to say, but we're going to be dissecting it with the boys as always. Before we go any further, please do hit subscribe on our YouTube page, that way you won't miss a single episode of Off the Fence, and this one in particular is going to be a cracker. So let's get stuck straight in. Quick hellos, Barry Geraghty, how are you? We're over in Aintree. How did you enjoy your trip to Liverpool?
Oh, brilliant, great few days, brilliant racing. Obviously the National was a heated race, we'd say beforehand, but brilliant result with the winner.
Absolutely, we are going to talk about that in due course. And Tony, you were watching from over in Ireland. How did you enjoy the 3 days as a whole?
Oh, as a whole, very good. The National and the aftermath, oh God, nearly stressful looking at some of the stuff and all the things that's happening afterwards. Much rather to be talking about the races and the performances and things like that, but so much other stuff going on. But I suppose it's just part of life, and we'll have a chat about it shortly, I'm sure.
Absolutely, and as you say, we try and focus in on the horses and the action actually on the track on this show, but there's no getting away from all of the action that happened away from the track and away from the actual results when you're focusing in on Aintree and the Grand National specifically. So let's get stuck straight in. Of course, Corach Rambler won, and we will get to his performance in due course. But as Tony and Barry have already touched upon, dramatic moments before the race with the protesters and a lot of fallout afterwards. Barry, we will talk about the performance of the horse, which was absolutely brilliant, shortly. But in terms of being at the track and those moments before the race took place, and then the comment and the discussion and the debate that's happened afterwards, as we sit here now, a few days, the dust has settled. What are your thoughts? Where is your head at when you're looking at the Grand National of 2023?
Yeah, well, I was in the parade ring when the delay started, and you could see the horses. Some horses were sweating up and getting on their toes, and then there was some taken out, and we had to wait. We were 15 minutes or so waiting, and then the jockeys came in, and it was very much get-go after that. But there was, I could imagine in the weigh room the level of uncertainty when you're waiting. Will we get out? Will we not? It's a little bit like the bomb scare from years ago. As I said, that uncertainty would cause a serious level of tension and anxiety amongst riders, especially the younger generation, if you like. The older lads maybe more able to take it, but there was a build up there, like that. Then you had horses who were very much on edge and onto the track, and away you go. So it was, I suppose, the atmosphere fueled itself from the back of the delay and the tension, as I mentioned. And then you have the off-go the field down over the first two fences, where you had 8 horses unseated or fell at the first two fences, where there was 17 horses unseated or fell in the previous 9 years. So I think that's a reflection of where everyone was, really, both horses and riders, and that led, then you had loose horses as a result of that. I think it fueled it all. Hill 16 obviously took that fatal fall at the first fence. He'd had 26 runs previous to that. He had never fallen. He unseated once when badly hampered. And he'd been 2nd and 7th in the previous 2 Beecher chases with no mistake. So he was a proven jumper, and he fell at the first. So, occasion, I would imagine, had got to him as well. So it was a real pity, and it was sad for everyone. But the protesters, what they actually caused was what they were trying to avoid. So it was a real pity for everyone.
Absolutely. I mean, it's funny because you were there on track and you've expressed what it was like there. But I mean, I think when you were watching it on the television, it was probably quite a different experience. Almost felt more tense because, of course, you can see the shots of the protesters. It was very dramatic. Whereas I guess when you're on course, you don't have access to those shots. You're not entirely sure. There's a delay because of protesters, but I would imagine you personally wouldn't have had any idea of how bad or not so bad those protesters were.
Yeah, you were getting glimpses on the phones, really. ITV on the phones. I was looking at over Nick Luck's shoulder at one stage as well. trying to get a bit, but there was a bit of chat around the parade and what was happening, but there was no mention as regards anyone knowing when the race was going to happen. We were trying to figure out how long can they wait, what time was dusk, which was I think about 8:15, so you were half an hour before that. We kind of felt we had 2 hours, so everyone was really anxious and worried and waiting to see what would happen, but no one really knew.
Yeah, fascinating. And from your point of view now, looking forward, have you been surprised by how big the comment, debate and discussion has been in the aftermath of the race? Were you surprised at how much this has blown up basically since Saturday?
Well, I suppose not surprised, but only not surprised because that's how life goes, you know, and they latch onto a story and it creates and it flows from there. But in recent years, in the last 14 or 15 months, both Bobsworth and Kicking King passed away after suffering injuries while living out in the field. So the land of milk and honey isn't a safe place either. So no matter where your horse is, be it in the field or where the protesters would like them roaming wild, there is no safety in that. So everyone does their best in racing to make racing as safe as it can be, and those levels have improved no end in recent years, especially in the last 20 years. But yeah, it's a pity for everyone, but no, I think racing has to be proud and stand up for what it is and what it represents.
Absolutely, well said. Tony, I'm very keen to move the conversation and the comment forward, to look forward. Where do you think racing should go direction-wise from this point? What should we be putting out there, and how should we be putting it out there?
Well, I suppose a very natural response is to get angry maybe with what's gone on. I'm not sure that's the best response. You find yourself pushed and pulled reading the sides of this, and people are very kind of entrenched on it. You're talking about watching it on TV and things like that. I was watching it on racing TV, and I thought Dan Skelton, I don't know was this really widely shared or was there much said about his interview, but he was on with Lydia Hislop as the kind of delay was going on. And I thought a lot of what he said, would align kind of with my own thoughts on the thing. Like absolutely, there has to be the right to protest in democratic society. If you don't have that, sure, how do things progress in many ways? And I'd respect the people's views on banning horse racing or banning the Grand National. I don't agree with them one iota, but they're entitled to express them in a peaceful fashion there, maybe at the front gate of Aintree and that. But obviously when they start jumping fences and putting ladders up and trying to get in on the fences and things like that, the security massively needs kind of to intervene. I think kind of in the aftermath what's kind of come across from some of the activists that have been doing the media and things like that is, and the social media, is there is a lack of understanding there of the sport, and there is a willingness, I suppose, to throw out a lot of misleading figures and accounts and things that don't really stand up to scrutiny. And I've also seen maybe some people in racing maybe saying we should be thinking about educating the activists and things like that. I can't wrap my head around that one at all. I think both sides, that side of things, are very kind of entrenched in their views, and offering to take them into racing yards and show them how well racing does welfare, it's just not going to wash. They have their views. If they're expressing them peacefully, fine. If they're not expressing them peacefully, the authorities need to step in. But however, I do think what racing kind of needs to do is kind of question these activists on some of the stuff. The logic, if you pursue it to its final end, is to just want eradication of thoroughbreds. To me, that doesn't seem really in sitting well with their kind of professed love of nature and stuff like that, and love of animals. So that would be obviously a point of question. But certainly what racing needs to be doing, I suppose, is to target maybe the middle, which is the vast majority of people. Like the vast majority of people, to me, are quite neutral on racing. They're not obsessive fans of it like myself, and they're not totally against it, like animal raising and some of these things. And all we can kind of do is try to present the best side of racing and try and convince them that we're doing things right. And look, this man has gotten a ton of praise, and I just like that, like Kevin Blake and Richard Hiles as well, by the way. They've done some brilliant stuff on this over the last while. They've been very rational, very kind of fact-based, against people maybe who aren't just being as rational and fair-minded and fact-based in what they're doing. Now, I would say at the minute, like, racing is probably winning this debate. They are getting the public support. Like, what whether there were a couple of hundred people outside Aintree protesting, and however many thousand attended the fixture over the 3 days, like, one figure dwarfs the other. And also back in Ireland here in recent weeks, University College Cork had the Vegan Society there put forward a petition where they wanted promotion of the student race days banned in the college, and that succeeded. But as far as I know, there were only a couple of hundred names on that petition, whereas over 50,000 have attended the student race days at the various places, the Tramores and the Limericks and the Leopardstowns over the last month or so. So again, you're winning that, but you have to keep kind of winning it, I suppose. Right, you have to work hard to maintain that, and all racing can kind of do is to kind of keep doing things right. Present your arguments fairly. You can't hide the fact that horses die. They do, but you want to be factually accurate there, as Barry has mentioned. They're also at risk if they're going to be out in the field, and also the kind of level of care that they get. And we have to we always have to keep pushing, improving welfare, whether it be equine or human. We've seen a case down the last couple of days where maybe the human side of things wasn't being managed well enough, and that needs to be watched. And you have to sort of say that when this has been done wrong, call it out and say so. Now, just my final thing is over the coming months, and I'm sure leading into Aintree next year, I am concerned about is this now going to be kind of an ongoing problem? To me, if I'm on the animal raising side of things, I think this is the greatest PR bonanza of all time. What was happening last week or so? Jesus, you couldn't buy the publicity that they've gotten, and if anything, that's going to kind of drive them on. So I hope that the race courses are kind of ready for this, are kind of prepared for this, because to me it is only going to get more extreme, and obviously it's disastrous, spoiling racecourse days and people's days and all this, but it actually could be quite dangerous. I did have a thought after it, the atmosphere at Aintree now, a lot of places you can fairly rowdy, if someone, maybe the crowd got interacting with some of these protesters, it could turn quite nasty. So just the racecourse are going to need to be aware of that into the summer and back coming around for Liverpool next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think a lot of people have, people who have made that point would be focusing as well towards Epsom and the Derby, obviously another extraordinarily high profile race, but with a lot of common public ground around it. So, I mean, racecourse, as you say, Tony, are going to really have to be across that. Shall we talk, I'm sure they will be, but shall we talk about the performance itself? Because, of course, Corach Rambler essentially bolted up in a Grand National, which happens pretty rarely. Wonderfully handicapped, wonderfully trained, owned by a syndicate. You've heard the story by now. Trainers came down their camper van, stayed on site with their dogs. Peter Scudamore, Lucinda Russell, I don't think there's any more charming sort of likeable trainers out there in the UK anyway when it comes to racehorses. So many lovely threads to this story, Barry, but the performance itself, when you actually watch it back, put aside all the politics and everything else, the horse never missed a beat really round there, and that's some effort. And the handicapping of this horse, the training, just can you give your view on that please now?
This horse has improved no end though. He put in a workman-like performance to win the Ultimate last season. He was never on the bridle. This year he travelled and he won impressively, and he pulled up when he got to the front. He didn't do a stroke when he got there. So he was £10 well in officially, but he improved no end from last season to this season, and his performances have matched that as well then. So what he actually did in the National himself, he was the only horse who was travelling, well, yes, the only horse, because not many horses ever travel like he did, turning in and down the straight, and would have got to the front for me an hour too soon, for Derek's sake. But he travelled well in front, got around the elbow, and then you could see him, like Cheltenham, having a little jink and a duck, and he was pulling up. But when he hit the line, he had his ears fully pricked. He was full of running, so he was in great shape, but he has improved throughout the season, and it was a brilliant performance. No horse travelled like him. I thought Vanillier, Noble Yates, Gerda Mesnil there came from way off the pace, probably struggled to go the pace, and Noble Yates was being pushed along for a lot of the race and still seemed to finish. So he put in a brilliant performance under his weight especially, but the winner was the one, and it was a standout performance. It'll be interesting to see what penalty he gets for it, and what route he'll take to try and get back to follow up his success again next year.
And Barry, a word from you on Derek Fox. In my ramble there, I didn't even mention him as part of the story really, but of course the few days/weeks that he's had in the run-up to the National, being injured, coming to Aintree with such good rides aboard Ahoy Senor, Apples Away, and of course Corach Rambler, he decides to say no to the first two. I'm gonna come back for the National ride. To have that confidence and conviction as a jockey, that's surely a pretty rare mindset to have.
Yeah, well, I'd say he was that restricted by his injury. He had a collarbone injury, and I'd say he couldn't risk riding anything else for the fear if he got a fall on it, he was going to be gone. So he sacrificed it all for the big one, and it worked out for him, and he was brilliant on him. And he's a brilliant rider. He's a great horseman. He's won the National before. You've seen him ride Cheltenham winners. He's a brilliant rider, and it's great success. Lovely, calm, quiet fella, and he gave the horse a beautiful ride. So no, brilliant for him to get back 9 days after, you know, as I said, damaging his collarbone. It was a brilliant turnaround for him.
Tony, how good a performance was it in terms of Grand Nationals in recent years? But B, how good a horse is Corach Rambler going to end up being?
Very hard to know now. The second question, it is such a unique test, and I just don't like to overreact too much to it, because it is so different to other races. I wouldn't be the greatest now. I haven't got the ratings in front of me in terms of performance, and the fact that he was £10 well in was obviously a massive help. Again, like Barry, I would credit the ride there an awful lot, because he has been this, I suppose, extreme hold-up horse in maybe his races over the park fences, but he was, Derek Fox was quite kind of happy to hold him up in the forefront of mid-division, if you like, you know, not getting into too much bother kind of deeper in the field. So that part of it was an impressive kind of tactical change, if you like. Like Barry said, he was in front a long way out, having absolutely powered through the race, and he was probably far and away the best horse. But I do think Vanilla, and to a lesser extent Gaillard de Many, left a little bit on the table here. Vanilla, look, the ride, in the sense that it was down the inside, I think was a good idea. It's brave to go down the inside, but you nearly have to these days be kind of middle to inside, or at least gradually work your way across to the inner, because you're just losing too much ground doing otherwise, and ground saving ride there in the early part of the race. Now, Vanilla, he didn't just jump quite as fluently, I thought, on the second circle. He was losing kind of quarter length, half a length kind of at fences, and he did get a little bit of hampering. I think it was just after Finehaven the second time round, but I still think Sean Flanagan should have been getting after him a little bit earlier. I think what with the sectional times here, I think he was 1.8 seconds, kind of 8 or 9 lengths quicker than the winner over the last two forms. Amazing kind of figure for a staying chaser. Now, I'm not saying for a second that Derek Fox's mount would not have pulled out more, but just for a horse to have that amount of running in, I would say Sean Flanagan was probably a bit annoyed with himself that he didn't get after a horse that stays very well a little bit sooner. Paul Townend and Gaillard de Many, he kind of moved the switch out, and then back in was a little bit strange, and that comes at a cost as well. So he was probably a little bit better than the form, but loads of other horses came at the credit with good runs down the field. Like the Big Dog, he raced wide for a lot, gradually kind of edged his way, and he's had a brilliant season. He's been actually credited to connections all season, winning the Limerick National, Tri-Town, running well in the Irish Gold Cup and falling. Excellent run here. Some of the smaller Irish yards, a couple of horses run deadly races. Thought Bornby to Sea could easily have been the 4 if he hadn't got hampered off the elbow. And Roy Mage as well went well for a long way, again also having raced wide. But yeah, where does Corach Rambler fit in? I don't know. I think with Noble Yates last season, and he has improved again this season, just a step back down in trip to Gold Cup and 3 mile races. Yeah, maybe you could win one, but can you win a real top class keenly contested one? I'm not so sure.
Okay, I think that's fair comment. I think I'd agree with you with that. Barry, let's talk about some of the other big performances from the week. Shishkin in the Aintree Bowl, of course. I mean, this horse, from the horse that he was when he was bolting up in 2 mile chases to the horse that he seems to have become in recent runs, should I say, specifically in the last few months, his demeanour, his way of racing has changed so much. Because now I'm thinking he's become quite lazy, has he?
He has, but I think it's probably unfair to judge him on his Cheltenham run especially. But this is his 3rd run back in a quick enough space of time. So I'm not fully sure we even saw the best of Shishkin. I think his run to beat Pic D'Orhy by 16 lengths in the Ascot Chase, that's the best of Shishkin. So that's what you need to reproduce to win a King George. And I don't see any reason why he shouldn't or couldn't. Ahoy Senor pressed on at the back of 2 out. Obviously a good stayer, but he was actually outstayed in the death by Shishkin. So I'd say Shishkin's class came to the fore, and maybe there is potential for him to step up in trip for a Gold Cup with the way he stayed on again towards the last and over the line. So there's definitely, I think there's a smarter performance in Shishkin, but he probably proved beyond doubt how well he really stays with how he stayed on to win on at the last week.
Okay, well, if that's the case then, Tony, if he does really stay, as Barry seems to think he does, and he showed last week, is he a Gold Cup horse for the future next season via the King George? Is this what we're looking at now with Shishkin?
I think he's just a little bit old for those type of races. Again, excellent training performance to get him back. I would have been very questioning of that. I kind of think the best horse might have been second here. Barry mentioned Ahoy Senor pressed on quite early here. Made a bit of a mistake at the last. And that's him. He does make lots of mistakes. But I just thought he shipped just a bit best. Credit to him. He was on, I think, his 6th run of the season, and he's running all these races, King Georges and Gold Cups, and racing Cheltenham there in January, even back starting at the Charlie Hall. So I think the count themselves a little bit of hard luck that he didn't come out on top. But yeah, Shishkin, I just don't know. Would he have the pace for a brave man's game and galloping the Champs with how he's racing currently? Obviously back on his previous form, he would. But I think they're a little bit better at the moment, and then there's possibly 1 or 2 to come out of the novices as well that might just have the legs in them.
Okay, I just want to slip in just one final Ahoy Senor question to you, Tony, then, because you know I'm a big fan of his. I mean, he makes those mistakes. He's clearly got a huge engine. If he was to put it all together for one day, one race next season in this division, where do you think that might be with him? Is a Gold Cup unrealistic, is what I'm asking.
I think it is, because you're just going to get a big field. I think this is the race. Aintree spring, nice ground seem to suit him every year. Flat track, you can possibly get away with a mistake here when there only tends to be the 4 or 5 runners. Whereas the Gold Cup recent years always tends to be a double figure field, and you'll always have something kind of nipping at your heels. But again, there is a big performance in him. I think maybe back here again next year.
Okay. Come on, Ahoy Senor. Not losing faith just yet. Barry, let's talk all things Constitution Hill. Obviously in the Aintree hurdle, up in trip. We discussed it on the show. The superstar, we wanted to see another special performance from him. And at one stage, I thought he was going to win by 10 or 15. Wasn't quite in the end the winning distance many people would have hoped. But the performance itself was still pretty impressive, even by his lofty standards. What comment can you add other than marvellous, we love Constitution Hill?
Not an awful lot. No, it was a great performance. Nico chose just to keep out of trouble, keep it simple, roll along. He went steady, you could say, probably for the first circuit or the most of it. But you could see the horse actually, as he went down the back straight, he stepped up in the gears himself and pressed on. He just got racing, and then actually steadied in the home straight. After doing that, and he coasted home. He was only going through the motions. Nico was having a peep up at the big screen. He was only doing as much as he had to do. It didn't have the same zip and punch, if you like, that it had in Cheltenham, but it was a very different race. And I'd say the fact he opened up that little bit down the back straight just maybe took a little bit of fizz out of him in the straight. And as I say, he just rolled down on his own time and just did as much as he had to do. So it was a beautiful performance to watch. It was probably a lot easier for me as a spectator to watch than Cheltenham, because it was very safe looking. But no, very good performance. Nice way for him to finish off the season, and it'll be interesting to see what route they take next season.
Come on, you know I'm going to push you on that, Barry, so you might as well just give a little bit more now. Can we expect him to go over fences? What have you heard? Or is he going to stay hurdling? Give us the intel.
He's going to school over fences soon, and there's lots of people who've put their name in the hat to be able to go to witness this schooling session, but there isn't going to be many there, if any. So Nico was telling me how when they schooled Altier over fences first time, it was himself and the governor were there, he said. So it would probably be something similar with Constitution Hill, but I would imagine he won't have a problem, especially on the schooling ground. But I wouldn't see him having any problem with jumping a fence. He ran a point to point, and he schooled here as a youngster, so it shouldn't be an issue for him. But it's whether they choose to go that route. the champion hurdle would look very tempting to keep back for that. So bit of deciding is going to have to be done there, but great to have the options.
Okay, on we roll. Jerry Colombe, Tony, sort of righted the wrong of Cheltenham, some might say, in the Mildmay Chase, and now he's he's a second favourite in the 2024 Gold Cup, if I can get my words out. Do you think he's a genuine Gold Cup contender for next year if Galopin Des Champs continues on the path he's on?
Yeah, he is a contender. He'd have the right profile. I thought this was visually very good. Jumped well, travelled well, did things right. Only doing, I suppose, what you would expect him to do. The second favourite, bronze jumping, didn't hold up at all. I think he'd made about 2 or 3 significant mistakes and another 2 or 3 maybe small ones along with that. So he didn't really have much to beat. But visually, I suppose, he travelled better. The ground by that point wasn't too bad. Which would give promise that he's already handled Cheltenham to a point. So yeah, of course, he would certainly have a chance in the Gold Cup. The whether he's kind of probably shortened up enough now into second favourite on the back of a race that he should have won, I'm not so sure.
Barry, would you concur those thoughts with Jerry Colombe?
Yeah, I probably would. I thought it was a smarter performance in Cheltenham. He seemed to travel better than he did, even though it's a sharper track, if you like. But no, good performance. But it will be another step for him to take Galopin Des Champs scalp, but this was definitely it was a good step forward.
Okay, step in the right direction. We want a competitive Gold Cup, and I'm sure that's how it will build next season. Tony, any other business elsewhere? Saw a couple of smart bumper performances, but also another year on, another Aintree Grand National Festival, another excellent training performance from Paul Nicholls with Pictory. We've been here before with a horse like this with him.
Yeah, absolutely, and I suppose it does confirm that Shishkin's big performance of the season was Ascot, that this horse was able to come out and kind of back that up. But it was, peak Paul Nicholls again, winning Grade 1s with, a horse that probably isn't going to win an ultra competitive Grade 1, but he places him very well, and you wouldn't be one bit surprised if he did likewise again next season. Another horse there, I think you'd have to give a mention to the Liverpool Hurdle winner, Sire de Burley, on Saturday. Usually, I think Gordon Elliott said he has one big performance in him and as a season, and I'm sure Mark Walsh was thinking after about half a mile, well, he says, look, which wasn't it a great day in Cheltenham type of thing. But no, he kind of got going again. That Liverpool Hurdle tends to be a real slog. I think sometimes in some ways it's even a stiffer test than the Steers Hurdle. I know in times it certainly takes a little bit longer. But an excellent kind of rallying performance out of him. I think he was probably the only one in it that really kind of paced efficiently. I think the rest of them are all kind of slowing up markedly in the closing stages. Marie's Rock ran very well. I'm sure Nick would have got some shock now when he's seen your man coming on the outside, because he said God help him, because I'm sure he thought he had absolutely everything covered at that stage. And so I don't think there's any doubt that she stayed the 3 mile trip, probably even improved for it. And there should be no issue with going for those races with her next season. Not all of them are run kind of in such an attritional fashion.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. And the one other one. Sorry, you're asking about bumper performance and stuff like that. I thought Dice Ordinos was a very good winner of the Mayor's bumper, kind of in a sharp time. He's kind of been kept a decent ground so far, but was beaten, not saying necessarily the pick of the Irish bumper mares, but certainly some of the better ones, and was visually very good in winning this one.
Okay, yeah, that covers up a few of the... Can't go into all these big races, we'd be here all night, but obviously, Barry, we should mention the novice hurdling division. We saw Irish Point win over the mid-div trip, In the Pocket win over 2 miles, and Apples Away over the staying trip. For a variety of owners, trainers and jockeys, great to see. In the Pocket, obviously backing up the supreme form. Irish Point, good result for Davy. But away from the obvious, were there any performances out of those novice hurdlers that you were really taken with? Anything you want to give a mention to?
Yeah, but as you mentioned, the In the Pocket put in a good performance. Irish Point likewise. Strong Leader though was a horse who I was really impressed with. He's also liked all season, but I think he could make a smart chaser next season. Stay Away Faye and Iroko probably paid the price for tough races at the festival. But just going back to the novice chasers, I thought John Bond was very impressive in the 2 mile novice, clocked a really good time, and for me visually that was his best performance of the year. And likewise Banbridge put up a good show against St. Rye, and I thought if you were to pick one there, maybe I think we saw the winner of the Gala Plate in maybe Visionarian.
Oh, okay, bold early shout, just throw that in, like it. Okay, good to know, Barry. Wasn't expecting that. Barry, let's stick with you because we've already mentioned Irish Point and what a good result it was for the man in the saddle, Davy Russell. Groundhog Day, retiring again. We know the story by now. But to be fair, we've given him the big chat on this show when he originally retired. We don't need to go over old ground. People can go and watch that back on our YouTube channel. But it was great to see him go out with the send-off someone like Davy Russell deserves, right, Barry?
Absolutely, it was brilliant. He obviously didn't get the luck he was hoping for in Cheltenham, and he had a quiet retirement, you could say, back during the winter, so caught more than myself by surprise. But it was great to see him get the level of success that he had at the festival this year at Aintree. 2 good wins. Probably would have rather not to have fallen out the back door at Galvin at the first in the Grand National. I'm sure he would have liked to have signed off in style there, but you aren't going to get 2 fairy tales 1 year after the other. But I'm sure he's very happy with how his week went to get those 2 good Grade 1 winners.
Yeah, and hopefully that's it now. He's gone out on his high and happy days for Davy. Tony, one last word on Davy from you.
Yeah, just as again we covered a lot of his achievements kind of the last time round, but I'd say now he hasn't had an easy last 3 or 4 weeks anyway there. Look, I'd say the strong impression that physically in Cheltenham he just wasn't fit for it, carrying injuries and carrying knocks and all that type of stuff. And I'd say, look, he was coming back to do Gordon Elliott a bit of a favour. Now I know he was getting something out of it himself, but it definitely didn't work out for him at Cheltenham, and I'd say Gordon Elliott was probably saying to himself, why the hell did they ask him back, put him kind of in that spot, but he certainly rated that, be putting him on 2 very fancy runners too that were very ready and got the job done. So kind of, as I say, rated maybe the wrongs at Cheltenham and things like that, made amends. This meeting is definitely becoming a kind of a target meeting for Gordon Elliott. I think this was the first time I've heard him mention that we're coming here to avoid Willie Mullins. He did specifically say that after Irish Point. Like he says there's a fella back in Ireland, that we'll be facing into at Punchestown next week. So I think we know what's coming from Tuesday on back at Punchestown with Gordon Elliott already kind of saying, look, I'm starting to aim a bit more to Liverpool.
Oh, I mean, it's predictable, but a little depressing, isn't it, to hear that? But of course, why wouldn't you avoid the juggernaut that is Team Mullins next week? So I don't blame them in any sense. Tony, before we move on to a very brief look at Ayr for Saturday, in case we've got anything to flag up there, obviously amid all the Aintree excitement, etc., there was a case early on in the week with Sean Curran and this horse Aces Full. Got quite a lot of press at the time because it was a bizarre case where the horse was withdrawn just minutes before the off due to some odd betting patterns. I suppose it's kind of been quickly forgotten about in the general racing press because of Aintree. But I did just want to give you the opportunity to reflect on that because, rightly so, I think many people flagging up that this sets a little bit of a bizarre precedent going forward.
Yes, I think that's the thing that stands out. It really was an unprecedented move, forcing the withdrawal of a horse so late in the day and for reasons that I suppose are unclear. The only thing that really came not even close to it, but in the same wheelhouse of it, there were a couple of kind of pre-race inquiries back in kind of summer of 2019 into some of the Irish yards running horses in England where the stewards were asking questions beforehand about market moves and maybe tactics and what was planned and things like that. And there's been no mention of that happening since. I do wonder, is that kind of move behind closed doors and that it's gone on, but they're just not mentioned. I actually, I might be in a minority of one here, I actually like that as an approach. I think it's a bloody good deterrent to anyone who's kind of thinking of doing something they shouldn't be doing. It's a bit like seeing a speeding van going along the road. It'll slow down a lot of people. maybe not the people who are really intent on doing something they shouldn't be. But I actually like that as a method, like just sort of flagging it, giving someone a tap on the shoulder kind of beforehand. Now with the Aces full case, like one would like to think that there was a very kind of good cause for this. Like betting moves, they aren't really enough to justify taking them out. Like there are betting moves every day of the week, and horse racing prices in particular are very volatile. They're not like sports betting prices, like, you know, they're not like I don't know, whoever's playing in Champions League tonight. Like horses move from 10 to 1 to 2 to 1 all the time, and the other way too. And sometimes they're for very genuine reasons. Something's been missed. And sometimes they are for sinister reasons. Now, we don't know which the case is here, but I think the big problem with the BHA is not necessarily what they've done, it's kind of the vacuum they've left in terms of information kind of afterwards, and it's led to all kinds of speculation, some of it more credible than others. Like the rights and wrongs of taking the horse out are very much open to debate, but it's the lack of info since, I suppose, and that possible precedent that it has set over the next wee while.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on. Preview time, a look ahead to Saturday, as I've kept promising on this show. We've got the Scottish National, obviously the Scottish Champion Hurdle, and the future Champions Novices Chase as well. Barry, let's bring you back in here. We will kick off with the Scottish National itself, where Kitty's Light currently heads the betting at 7-2, Monbeg Genius in there at 9-2, Your Own Story at 8, Flower of Scotland at 12s. Competitive, as you would expect, but we've seen this time and time again. Christian Williams with a horse like this in this sort of race, Kitty's Light at the top of the market. Are you going away from him at this stage?
Yeah, she was very impressive the last day, and she's been really well campaigned. But no, I like Monbeg Genius and John Joe in a staying chase. John Joe is brilliant. This was third behind Corach Rambler in the Ultima, only beaten 2.5 lengths. Possibly you could have delayed his challenge a little bit later, might have helped him, wasn't going to beat the winner, but it was a good run. He's 3 from 5 over fences, so I still think there's potential for improvement in this fella. Pedigree would suggest, he's by Shannon 2 out of a Supreme Leader mare, pedigree would suggest that he would get further, so he would be the one for me. The other was Oscar Elite, who was 14 lengths back in the Ultima as well, went 5th. Likewise got a little bit competitive early, and probably just didn't see it out brilliantly, but if you go back in his form, he was second to Vanilla in the Albert Bartlett and was third behind the High Seigneur in the Sefton the same season, so he should stay well. That was a good run, and I think there's potential for better at a fancy price on him, but for me, if I had my choice, I'd go with Monbeg Genius.
Okay, couple of throws of the darts at the board in the Scottish National for Barry. What about you, Tony? Has anything jumped out that's the wrong price or in with a very obvious chance?
Not really. I had a bit of a look at it, but I don't think this would really be my strong suit. Not that many Irish horses involved. Kitty's Light, it's a gelding, isn't it? I know they're trying to bloody confuse us with the names and name of this horse. Yeah, no, I've been caught more times with this horse. Look, very obvious claims. £3 lower than what he was in it last year, and £5 lower than the Tour de Hewick in the race at Standard. Obviously, of the Irish horse, I do think Melina Girl might still have a bit of upside over these staying trips. She was just maybe finding her jumping, coming under a little bit of pressure there when running in the against the likes of Allegory, Devassia and places like Torless. But when she went up and tripped there for the Ulster National down Patrick, travelled and jumped much better, and beat another novice mare that would have looked to improve for going up and trip and would have been unexposed. So if she takes her chance, I think she'd have a bit of a life anyway of hitting the frame. Okay,
and Tony, we'll stick with you for the Scottish Champion Hurdle. And the Mean Lion is your 11-2 favourite for the Kerry Lee team. Colonel Mustard in there at 6s. Isio in there at 6s. Those are your top sort of 3 in the betting. Colonel Harry as well at 8-1. Soaring Glory 9s. Very competitive renewal of this race. But again, is there an obvious bet in this race for you with those BoyleSports prices?
I did give Kieran Mustard. I think he definitely deserves his position there at the top of the market. He was third in a hot county hurdle last year. Statement obviously has come out of it, won all the grade 1s. The likes of First Street, Ballyadam have done it no harm since. He was off 140 in that. He's 145 now, but he's shaped like he may well be ahead of that mark on the Kelso run. I'd say he's paid for making his move plenty soon enough there and been mugged late on by Benson. Now I think he picked up a little bit of a scrape or a knock afterwards, but the trainer was saying today that he's okay for this race. And look, it's probably going to be a bit weaker than on a smaller field size than maybe something like the county hurdle. So I think he's got a favourite chance and should go well.
Okay, 6-1 currently. Barry, anything for you in this race?
Yeah, I like Newman Lane. I thought good performance in Kelso last time. 2 from 4. It's a competitive race, but you know, Ayr is a very sharp track and a quick track, and for me it just needs something that's might be just slightly ahead of the handicapper. And I think at that 2 from 4 over hurdles, relatively unexposed, up £4 for the last win, I think there's potential for more, and I think you need a horse with that little bit of potential. So I'd be worried about a lot of them. Would they just have the natural pace that's needed for what will probably be good ground at Ayr on Saturday? So I'd be happy to take a punt on the favourite.
Okay, 11-2 with BoyleSports as we talk right now. And Barry, what about the future champion novices chase? Balco Coastal is 5-2 at the top of the market with BoyleSports. McFabulous not always looked the most straightforward horse, 3-1. Not long May 3-1. Thunder Rock at 6s, hanging there at 7s. Again, obviously we're doing this a few days out, but Balco Coastal, is he a worthy favourite for a race like this?
I'm not so sure. I was more in the Not Long Till May camp. Good second behind Stage Star on the Tours. Obviously Stage Star let that down slightly in Aintree, but Paul Nicholls reporting to run flat, and it looked that way. But Not Long Till May, should I say, had won its previous 4. This was a big step up at Cheltenham, but it looks like a horse who still has that bit of potential. So I think if we can back up its Cheltenham run, will be the one for me.
Okay, and Tony, last word to you on that race. Not Long Till May for Barry at 3s. Anything else in there that you want to give a mention to?
Just give a mention to Tell Me Something Girl, who wouldn't be usual for Henry de Bromhead to have too many runners at this meeting, but I'm not sure there's an obvious mares only race for her, so maybe he thinks that maybe a bit of nice ground might suit. Her jumping early on over fences was very, very moderate, but it was better last day behind Bride's Hill. They have persisted with her, and she has sharpened up a bit. So I think, again, look at it, just interesting to see how she goes rather than necessarily than fancying her out of the way.
Okay, interest there. Lads, thank you very much as always. Much enjoyed recording this show. Obviously, Aintree debrief and a quick look ahead to Ayr. Always a joy with you guys. And that about wraps up proceedings. Join us again next week where we will be looking at Punchestown, of course. And it's our last episode of this season of Off the Fence. So just one more week to go, and there'll be plenty to get stuck into next week ahead of that Mammoth Festival at Punchestown. So stay tuned for that. But for now, thank you very much for watching. As always, that was Off the Fence.